The great feast hall in Baghdad was filled with a warm golden light. The guests had finished their sumptuous meal, and a hushed expectancy settled over the room. All eyes turned to their host, the legendary merchant Sinbad the sailor, whose face, though lined with age and experience, still held the vibrant energy of a man who had seen the world's farthest corners. "My friends," he said, his voice deep and reflective, "when I returned from my 6th voyage, having escaped the island of the dead and the subterranean river, I was a man transformed. I had seen enough of the world's wonders and terrors to fill 10 lifetimes. My hair had turned gray, and my bones ached with the memory of storms and shipwrecks. I absolutely laid aside all thoughts of traveling. My age now required rest, and I was resolved no more to expose myself to such risks as I had encountered. I thought of nothing but to pass the rest of my days in tranquility here in my beloved Baghdad, surrounded by my family and friends, enjoying the fruits of my labors and giving thanks to Allah for His mercy. For a time, this quiet life was all I desired. My days were filled with peaceful routines, managing my investments from the comfort of my home, visiting the baths, discussing poetry with scholars, and hosting gatherings like this one. The sea was but a distant memory, a painted backdrop to my now settled existence. One day, however, as I was treating my friends to a feast much like this one, laughing and sharing stories, a shadow fell across the doorway. One of my servants entered, his face pale with a mixture of fear and respect. He approached me and whispered, "Master, an officer of the Caliph's guard is at the gate. He inquires for you with great urgency." A hush fell over the table. To be summoned by the Caliph Harun al-Rashid himself was no small matter. It could mean great honor, or it could mean sudden peril. I rose from the table, my heart beating a little faster, and went to meet the officer. He was a tall man in a shining uniform, his expression grave. "Sinbad," said he to me, saluting formally, "the commander of the faithful, Caliph Harun al-Rashid, has sent me to tell you that he must speak with you immediately. You are to follow me to the palace." I dared not disobey. I followed the officer through the bustling streets of Baghdad to the great palace gates. I was conducted through marble halls and quiet courtyards until I was brought before the Caliph himself, seated on his magnificent throne of gold and ivory. Being presented to the Caliph, I saluted him with the utmost respect, prostrating myself at his feet and kissing the ground before him. "Rise, Sinbad," said he to me in a voice that commanded instant obedience. "I stand in need of your service. You are known throughout my dominions as a man of great resourcefulness, courage, and experience in foreign lands. I have decided to send an embassy to the powerful King of Serendib, whose magnificent gifts and letter you brought to me on your last voyage. It is but just and fitting that I should return his civility with equal splendor. You, Sinbad, shall be my ambassador. You must carry my answer and my presents to him." This command of the Caliph was to me like a sudden clap of thunder from a clear sky. The blood drained from my face. To go to sea again? To face the storms, the pirates, the monsters? I felt old and weary at the very thought. "Commander of the faithful," I replied, my voice trembling slightly, "I am your slave, ready to do whatever your majesty shall think fit to command. My life is in your hands. But I beseech you most humbly, by the beard of the Prophet, to consider what I have undergone in my 6 former voyages. I have been shipwrecked, enslaved, buried alive, and hunted by giants. I am old now, and I have made a solemn vow to Allah never to leave Baghdad again, but to end my days here in peace." Hence, to make him understand the depth of my reluctance, I took occasion to give him a full and particular account of all my adventures. I told him of the rock that carried me to the Valley of Diamonds, of the cannibal giants, of the old man of the sea who rode on my shoulders, and of the subterranean river that carried me through the bowels of a mountain. The Caliph listened with great patience and interest, his eyes widening at the tales of wonder and horror. As soon as I had finished, he leaned back on his throne and stroked his beard thoughtfully. "I confess, Sinbad," said he, "that the things you tell me are very extraordinary, more fantastic than the tales of poets. You have indeed suffered much. Yet, my decision stands. You are the only man who has been to Serendib and knows its king. You understand the customs and the route. For my sake, and for the honor of our caliphate, you must undertake this one final voyage which I propose to you. It will not be like your others, fraught with uncertainty. You will travel as my royal ambassador, under my protection, in a fine ship. You will only have to go to the Isle of Serendib, deliver the commission which I give you, receive the king's reply, and return. It would not comport with my dignity to be indebted to the king of that island for his magnificent gifts, nor to send a lesser man to bear my response. Perceiving that the caliph insisted upon my compliance and that further resistance would be both futile and dangerous, I submitted to his will. "Your Majesty's command is law," I said, bowing my head. "I am willing to obey." He was very well pleased with my submission and immediately ordered his treasurer to give me 1,000 gold sequins for the expenses of my journey and personal preparations. He also commanded that a swift and sturdy ship be made ready for me at the port of Basra, manned by a select crew and guarded by a company of his own soldiers to ensure my safety. I spent the next few days making preparations for my departure, saying my farewells to my saddened family, and putting my affairs in order once more. As soon as the caliph's magnificent letter and costly presents for the king of Serendib were delivered to me, packed in cypress chests bound with iron, I set out. I traveled down the Tigris River on a comfortable barge to Basra, where my ship awaited me. It was a fine vessel, the best I had ever sailed upon. We embarked with pomp and ceremony, the caliph's banner flying from the mainmast. We set sail with a fair wind, and for the first time in my life, I had a truly happy and uneventful voyage. There were no storms, no monsters, no disasters. The winds were favorable, the sea was calm, and the captain knew his business well. Having arrived safely at the port of the Isle of Serendib, I was received with great honor by the local officials when they saw the caliph's flag. I acquainted the king's ministers with my high commission and prayed them to get me speedy audience with their sovereign. They did so with all dispatch, and I was conducted in a grand procession, accompanied by drums and trumpets, to the royal palace. I entered the great throne hall, which I remembered from my previous visit, and saluted the king by prostration, according to the custom of his country. That prince, seated on his throne supported by elephants, knew me immediately, despite the years that had passed. His face lit up with a genuine smile. "Sinbad," said he to me in a warm voice, "you are welcome back to Serendib. I have many times thought of you since you departed my kingdom. Your strange adventures have been told and retold in my court. I bless the day on which we see one another once more, and I am honored that the great caliph has chosen you as his messenger." I made my compliments to him in the best manner I could, expressing my gratitude for his past kindness. After having thanked him for his warm welcome, I solemnly delivered the caliph's letter and the magnificent presents. The king received them with all imaginable satisfaction. He ordered the chest to be opened before him. The caliph's present was truly princely. It consisted first of a complete suit of cloth of gold, woven with exquisite patterns and valued at 1,000 sequins. Then, 50 robes of the richest stuffs from the looms of Damascus and Baghdad, and 100 bolts of the finest white linen cloth from Cairo, Suez, and Alexandria. There was also a marvelous vessel of agate, broader than it was deep, an inch thick and half a foot wide. The bottom of it represented in finely carved bas-relief a man with one knee on the ground, who held a bow and an arrow ready to discharge at a lion, a work of surpassing artistry. Finally, he sent him a rich tablet of ancient jade, covered with mystical inscriptions, which, according to tradition, had once belonged to the great prophet Solomon himself. The king of Serendib examined each item with wonder and delight. Then he took the caliph's letter and read it with great attention. The letter was as follows: "Greeting in the name of the sovereign guide of the right way, from the dependent on God, Harun al-Rashid, whom God hath set in the place of vicegerent to his prophet, after his ancestors of happy memory, to the potent and esteemed Raja of Serendib. We received your noble letter and your magnificent gifts with great joy. They are a testament to your wisdom and generosity. In return, we send you this letter and these presents from our imperial residence in Baghdad, the garden of superior wits. We hope when you look upon them, you will perceive our good intention, our high regard for your person, and our desire for continued friendship between our realms. Be pleased to accept them as a token of our brotherly affection. Adieu." The king of Serendib was highly gratified that the great caliph had answered his friendship with such dignity and magnificence. He treated me with the utmost honor during my stay. I was lodged in a wing of the palace and feasted daily at the royal table. A little time after this audience, having fulfilled my mission successfully, I solicited leave to depart. I was anxious to return to Baghdad and my quiet life. However, I had much difficulty to obtain it. The king enjoyed my company and wanted me to stay longer, perhaps to relate more of my stories. He tempted me with offers of high positions in his court, but I remained steadfast in my desire to return home. I embarked immediately on my ship, which had been waiting in the harbor, to return to Baghdad. My heart was light, for the difficult part of my duty was done, and I looked forward to a swift journey home. But alas, I had not the good fortune to arrive there so speedily as I had hoped. God ordered it otherwise, and my trials were not yet over. 3 or 4 days after our departure from Serendib, while we were sailing on the open sea, we were spotted by a squadron of pirate ships. They were swift vessels, manned by fierce corsairs who plied these waters in search of prey. They bore down on us rapidly, their decks crowded with armed men. They easily seized upon our ship, because it was no vessel of force, being a merchantman designed for cargo, not war. The Caliph's soldiers on board offered brave resistance, fighting fiercely on the decks, but they were outnumbered 10 to 1. The fight was short and bloody. Some of the crew and soldiers paid for their bravery with their lives, cut down by pirate scimitars. But for myself and the rest of the merchants and crew who saw the hopelessness of the situation and were not so imprudent as to fight against overwhelming odds, we surrendered. The corsairs saved us on purpose, not out of mercy, but to make slaves of us. They were slavers as well as robbers. We were all stripped of our fine clothes and possessions. The pirates plundered the ship, taking the king's presents, my own goods, and everything of value. They then sank our good ship and took us aboard their own crowded, filthy vessels. Instead of our own clothes, they gave us sorry rags to wear. They chained us together and carried us for many days across the sea until we came to a remote and barbarous island, a notorious market for human flesh. There, we were dragged to the marketplace and sold like cattle to the highest bidder. I was overwhelmed with grief and despair at this sudden reversal of fortune, from a royal ambassador to a wretched slave in the blink of an eye. As fate would have it, I fell into the hands of a rich and respected merchant of that island. He was a grave, older man with a kind face. As soon as he bought me, he carried me to his large house in the city. To my surprise, he treated me well. He ordered his servants to give me a bath, food, and clad me handsomely, not in rags, but in decent clothes suitable for an upper servant. Some days after, when I had recovered my strength and spirits a little, he sent for me. Not knowing who I really was, he asked me in a kindly tone if I understood any trade or handicraft by which I could earn my keep. I answered him truthfully that I was no mechanic or artisan, but a merchant from Baghdad, and that the corsairs who sold me had robbed me of all I possess in the world. "A merchant?" he said, looking at me thoughtfully. "That is a pity, for I have no need of clerks. But tell me," replied he, a new idea seeming to strike him, "can you shoot with a bow?" I was surprised by the question, but I answered that the bow had been one of my favorite exercises in my youth in Baghdad, and that I had been considered a fair shot. "That is good," said he. "We shall see." He gave me a strong, well-made bow and a quiver full of sharp arrows. Then, taking me behind him upon a great elephant, he carried me out of the city and into the countryside. We traveled for several hours until we came to a vast, thick forest that stretched for leagues. We penetrated a great way into the wood, following a narrow, winding path. The trees were huge and ancient, their branches interlacing overhead to create a perpetual twilight. Finally, he stopped the elephant in a small clearing near a mighty tree and bade me alight. Then, showing me the great tree, he said, "Climb up that tree, my friend. It overlooks a path much frequented by elephants. Sit there and wait. Shoot at the elephants as you see them pass by, for there is a prodigious number of them in this forest. Their tusks are very valuable to us. If any of them fall to your arrows, come back to the city and give me notice. This shall be your employment." Having spoken this, and leaving me a supply of victuals and water for several days, he turned his elephant and returned to the town, leaving me alone in the wild forest. I climbed into the lower branches of the great tree and found a secure place to sit, where I was hidden by the leaves but had a good view of the path below. I continued upon the tree all that night, listening to the strange and frightening sounds of the jungle, the cries of unseen beasts, the rustling of leaves, and the distant trumpeting of elephants. I saw no elephant during the night, but next morning, as soon as the sun was up, I heard a great noise of crashing timber. I looked down and perceived a great number of enormous elephants marching in a single file along the path. They were magnificent and terrifying beasts. I waited until a large tusker was directly beneath me. My heart pounding, I drew my bow to its full extent and let fly an arrow. It struck the beast in the flank. He roared in pain and fury, alerting the others. I shot several more arrows among them in quick succession. The elephants trumpeted wildly, milling about in confusion. At last, one of the elephants, struck by a lucky shot to the heart, stumbled and fell to the ground with a crash that shook the earth. The rest of the herd, seeing their comrade fall, became panic-stricken and retired immediately, crashing through the undergrowth and leaving me at liberty. I climbed down from the tree, my limbs trembling. I viewed the dead behemoth, and then, making a mark on the trees to find the spot again, I set out to return to the city. I went and acquainted my patron with my booty. When I had informed him of my success, he was greatly pleased. He gave me a good meal, commended my dexterity with the bow, and caressed me highly, calling me a valuable servant. We went afterwards together, taking an elephant to carry the burden back to the forest. We found the dead elephant, and my patron, being skilled in such matters, quickly removed the 2 massive ivory tusks. We carried them back to the city, and he explained that he designed to trade them for a great profit when the merchant ships arrived. I continued this employment for 2 months. It was a solitary and dangerous life. I killed an elephant almost every day, getting sometimes upon one tree and sometimes upon another, moving my position to avoid being tracked by the intelligent beasts. My patron was growing rich on the ivory I provided, and he treated me with increasing kindness, though I was still his slave. One morning, as I looked for the elephants from my perch in a high tree, I perceived with extreme amazement that, instead of passing by me across the forest in a file as usual, they stopped. They had come in such immense numbers that the plain beneath me was covered with their dark gray bodies, and the ground shook under their combined weight. They came toward my tree with a horrible noise, a cacophony of trumpeting and rumbling that deafened me. They encompassed the tree in which I was concealed on all sides, forming a thick, impenetrable ring. They stood there, their trunks extended in the air, sniffing for my scent, and all fixed their small, intelligent eyes upon the spot where I was hiding. At this alarming spectacle, I continued immovable, frozen with terror. I realized they had discovered my ambush and had come for revenge. I was so much terrified that my strength left me, and my bow and arrows fell uselessly out of my numb hands and clattered to the ground below. My fears were not without cause. After the elephants had stared upon me for some time, as if communicating with each other, one of the largest of them, a monstrous bull with tusks like curved swords, stepped forward. He put his powerful trunk round the foot of the tree. With a heave of incredible strength, he plucked it up by the roots as if it were a mere weed and threw it violently on the ground. I fell with the tree, crashing through the branches, bruising myself sorely. I lay on the ground, stunned and expecting to be trampled to death instantly. But the elephant who had uprooted the tree did not kill me. Instead, he gently took me up with his trunk and laid me on his broad back. I sat there, gripping his coarse hair, more like one dead than alive with fear, my empty quiver still on my shoulder. He put himself afterward at the head of the rest of the herd, who followed him in troops like an obedient army. He carried me a considerable way through the forest, deeper than I had ever gone before. We traveled for hours until we came to a hidden valley. There, the leading elephant laid me down gently on the ground and then retired with all his companions, disappearing back into the forest without harming me further. After having lain some time, waiting to be sure they were truly gone, I got up shakily and looked around. I found I was upon a long and broad hill located in the center of the valley. To my astonishment, the entire hill was almost covered with the white bones and massive tusks of dead elephants. There were thousands upon thousands of them, bleached by the sun, representing untold wealth in ivory. I confess to you that this object furnished me with abundance of reflections. I admired the instinct and strange intelligence of those animals. I doubted not but that this was their secret burying place, where they came to die when their time was near. They had carried me thither on purpose to show it to me, as if to say, "Here is what you seek. Take these teeth of our dead and forbear to persecute the living for the sake of ivory." I did not stay long on the hill, for the sight was melancholic and I feared the return of the herd. I noted the landmarks carefully and turned toward the city. After having traveled for a day and a night without stopping, guiding myself by the sun and stars, I came at last to my patron's house, exhausted and footsore. As soon as he saw me, he rushed to embrace me. "Ah, poor Sinbad," exclaimed he, with genuine relief in his voice. I was in great trouble to know what was become of you. I have been to the forest to look for you, and I found the tree newly pulled up by the roots, and your bow and arrows lying broken on the ground. I feared you had been torn to pieces by the elephants, and I despaired of ever seeing you more. Pray tell me what befell you, and by what good chance you are still alive." I sat down, drank some water, and then satisfied his curiosity by relating the whole incredible adventure exactly as it happened. The attack of the herd, my capture, the strange journey on the elephant's back, and the discovery of the Hill of Bones. He listened with amazement, scarcely able to believe his ears. "This is a miracle," he cried. Going both of us next morning, we took several elephants and followed my directions back to the hidden valley. My patron found to his great joy that what I had told him was true. The hill was a treasure trove of ivory beyond his wildest dreams. We loaded the elephants, which had carried us with as many tusks as they could bear, choosing the finest and largest ones. When we returned to the city with our incredible cargo, my patron was overcome with gratitude. "Brother," said he to me, "God has blessed you with a wondrous fate. I will treat you no more as my slave, for you have done me a service that no slave could be expected to perform. After having made such a discovery as will enrich me and my family forever, it would be unjust to hold you in bondage. God bless you with all happiness and prosperity. I declare before him that I give you your liberty here and now. You are a free man." I thanked him with tears in my eyes for his generosity. Then he continued, "I concealed from you what I am now going to tell you. The elephants of our forest have every year killed a great many of our slaves, whom we sent to seek ivory as you did. It was a deadly trade. God has delivered you from their fury and has bestowed that signal favor upon you only, showing them the secret of the Bone Hill. It is a sign that he loves you and has some great use for your service in the world. You have procured me incredible wealth, far more than I could have gathered in a lifetime. Formerly, we could not procure ivory but by exposing the lives of our slaves to constant danger. And now, thanks to you, our whole city can be enriched by gathering the ivory from the hill without shedding blood. I could engage all our inhabitants to contribute toward making your fortune as a reward, but I will have the glory of doing it myself, out of my own newfound wealth." To this obliging and generous declaration I replied, "Patron, God preserve you and increase your prosperity. Your giving me my liberty is reward enough to discharge whatever you might think you owe me. The freedom to return to my home and family is more precious to me than all the ivory in your warehouses. I desire no other reward for the service I had the good fortune to do to you and your city, but leave and means to return to my own country." "Very well," said he. "Your wish shall be granted. The monsoon winds will in a little time bring the great merchant ships from the west to trade for our ivory. I will then secure a passage for you on the best ship and give you wherewith to bear your charges and a goodly capital to restart your life in Baghdad." I thanked him again for my liberty and his good intentions toward me. I stayed with him in his house, no longer as a slave, but as an honored guest, expecting the monsoon. During that time, we made so many journeys to the hill with teams of elephants that we filled all his warehouses to bursting with finest ivory. The other merchants of the city who traded in it soon discovered our secret, for such a thing could not be long concealed. They too began to gather the ivory, and the whole city prospered, blessing my name. The ships arrived at last, a great fleet from India and Persia. My patron, true to his word, himself made choice of the finest and safest ship wherein I was to embark. He loaded half of its hold with ivory on my sole account, a fortune in itself. He also laid in provisions in abundance for my passage, the best food and wine the island could offer. And besides all this, he obliged me to accept a present of some rare curiosities of the country of great value, pearls, spices, and precious woods. After I had returned him 1,000 thanks for all his favors and embraced him as a brother, I went aboard. We set sail with a fair wind. As the adventure which procured me this liberty and wealth was very extraordinary, I had it continually in my thoughts during the voyage. We stopped at some islands to take in fresh provisions and trade. Our vessel being come at last to a large port on the mainland in the Indies, we touched there. Not being willing to venture by sea any further, having had enough of corsairs and shipwrecks, I decided to land my proportion of the ivory and goods there, resolving to proceed on the rest of my journey by land caravans, which I deemed safer. I landed my cargo and sold my ivory in that city for vast sums of gold, for ivory was scarce and in high demand there. I bought several rarities and precious stones for presents for my family and friends in Baghdad. When my equipage was ready, I set out in company with a large and well-guarded caravan of merchants traveling west. I was a long time on the way, crossing deserts and mountains, and suffered much fatigue from the journey. But I endured all with patience and a light heart when I considered that I had nothing to fear from the angry seas, from ruthless pirates, from giant serpents, or from the other perils to which I had been exposed in my 7 voyages. Every step on solid ground brought me closer to home. All these fatigues ended at last, and I arrived safe at Baghdad. I was received by my family with transports of joy, for they had again given me up for dead. I went immediately to the palace to wait upon the caliph. I was admitted to his presence and gave him a full and faithful account of my embassy, how I had delivered his letter and presents to the king of Serendib, the king's favorable reply, and then the disastrous voyage home, my capture by pirates, my slavery, and my miraculous deliverance by the elephants. That prince listened with rapt attention. He said he had been very uneasy as I was so long in returning, fearing the worst, but that he always hoped God would preserve me for my service to him. When I told him the adventure of the elephants and the Hill of Bones, he seemed much surprised and declared that he would never have given any credit to so fantastic a tale had he not known my veracity and character from my previous accounts. He deemed this story and the other relations I had given him of my 7 voyages to be so curious and instructive that he ordered one of his chief secretaries to write them all down in characters of gold and lay them up in his royal treasury, that they might be preserved for all future generations as a testament to the wonders of Allah's creation and the resilience of the human spirit. I retired from the caliph's presence well satisfied with the high honors I received and the magnificent presents which he gave me in recognition of my service and suffering. And ever since that day, I have absolutely kept my vow. I have devoted myself wholly to my family, kindred, and friends, living a quiet and charitable life in Baghdad, and never again venturing upon the sea. Sinbad here finished the relation of his 7th and last voyage. A long silence followed, as the guest pondered the incredible tale. Then, addressing himself to Sinbad the porter, who sat seemingly lost in thought, Sinbad said gently, "Well, friend, did you ever hear of any person that suffered so much as I have done, or of any mortal that has gone through so many vicissitudes and dangers in the pursuit of fortune? Is it not reasonable that, after all this, I should enjoy a quiet and pleasant life in my old age?" As he said this, Sinbad rose from his seat and drew near to him. He took Sinbad's hand and kissed it with great respect and humility. "Sir," said Sinbad, "I must acknowledge that you have gone through many imminent dangers, the likes of which few men could survive. My troubles as a porter, heavy though they are not comparable to yours. If they afflict me for a time, I comfort myself with the thoughts of the honest profit I get by them, and the safety of my life on land. I was wrong to envy you. You not only deserve a quiet life, but are worthy of all the riches you enjoy, because you earn them through immense hardship, and because you make of them such a good and generous use, sharing your bounty with the poor and with your friends. May you therefore continue to live in happiness and peace till the day of your death." Sinbad was touched by the porter's words. He then gave him 100 gold sequins more, as he had done after each story. He received Sinbad into the number of his closest friends, embraced him, and desired him to quit his hard porter's employment forever, and come and dine every day with him at his table, that he might have ample reason all the rest of his life to remember Sinbad the Voyager and his incredible adventures.